Okay, so let's do a video. Probably should have done this instead of going to the gym. Actually, I'm going to preface this with that. I just got back from the gym, and I'm going to go over overtraining. But the number one factor is irritability. Okay, when people start irritating you and you just start getting angry and you can't really know, sort of they equate it with roid rage, which roid rage might be the drug, or it could just be that your body is just expanding, and it could be the pain that you go through while on the drug. But I'm not even going to go really into like all that. I'm just saying is that like I was a little irritated, and actually I wasn't really irritated. It just was like you could just tell things weren't going correct. And I was like getting into my routine, and just the most simple of it. I wasn't going to go hard at all anyway. And legitimately the easiest of like my warm up, I was like exhausted after it. And usually it's a warm up. So typically I need that. And then, I'm not even ready to get going after that. I'm not tired by any means. So today it was like, I have this warm up and I'm dying afterwards. I have to like sit down and just like, collect my thoughts and that's part of it. Okay. And like, medically you can like, they'll say like your blood oxygen, they'll say anything. You have a lot of shit to say. And they'll call it a million different things. But in truth, like it's just being tired. And overtraining, to me, from my perspective, from not being a doctor or anything really, just from my experience of training, being a YouTuber on the internet and not TV. Unless you're watching it on a TV, then it's on TV. You know what I'm saying? Like Apple TV, YouTube, and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm just like kind of lightening the mood right there. But like really, if you are noticing that you're fatiguing like way before you normally would, that's one of the levels of overtraining. Okay. And I'm going to do an overview real quick. See, I wrote down notes. So maybe it'll go a little bit better. And I should have gotten through it already, but I was just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. Or just at least show a little bit of character. God, I'm a loser. So basically, there's two groups of people. Okay, there's people that never train hard enough. And if you're moving and you're training, I guess it's enough. Okay, but there's this group that like they will never push themselves, and they don't understand. They use the excuse that I go to the gym every day, but you couldn't tell they go to the gym. They don't really show signs that they go to the gym. And that's what I usually typically say is the people that never need to worry about overtraining, because they're not even training. They're not even really maintaining. It's more like a social thing. And I'm not saying it's bad. Like going to the gym can be social. Not supposed to be, isn't social, all those different things. Like I think if you go to the gym, like it's a place, like you take a class or you're walking on a treadmill. Like you're doing something and you're being active and there's people there. It's a place to meet. They serve drinks, all that type of stuff. It's definitely a place where you can talk and get along with people. And it's really not that bad, you know what I'm saying, to just go there to like at least get warmed up and move a little bit, and whether that takes you like sometimes people are like, oh, you're there too long, you're not there enough, and like some people they're there for hours and other people they're there for 20-30 minutes, and you can argue against both. And if you are arguing, you're probably closer to the overtraining. So I guess what I have to say is that I kind of listed that down. And I could go into this detail for forever. But this is kind of the whole point of pacing yourself is so you don't hit overtraining. So like even though this isn't like, okay, you pace yourself with this, but this is like kind of the end result. Okay? And I'm going to just start from the top, and then I'm going to go back to where we started. So I'm going to start with overtraining, and then I'm going to talk about how you don't even train, or about the proper way to train, okay? So overtraining. And I put it down into 5 indicators. See, look, all organized. And this is what you have to push for. Okay, so like when you're overtraining, it's not that you're going through the motions anymore. You are pushing yourself, and you know it. And the first indicator is pain. And this can be a sharp or dull pain. And the sharp pain can be from like a joint injury, or like you pull a muscle. Well, usually I actually put I put a dull pain, because usually like before you have like you rip a muscle, like you could feel like your muscles like aching. So to me, that's a dull pain. And so typically what happens is that there's a breakdown of form from the pain you're experiencing. So if you're running along, typically you like lose your form because your muscles are starting to you're starting to have what I can't even say those words, but your muscles are starting to fatigue and your joints are starting to hurt, or there's like a reason, and usually it's like pain and suffering, whether it's you can't breathe or whatever it is. That's a breakdown in form. So the second is form. Okay, and there is 2 ways that breaking form can happen. So you can purposely go harder than typical and you cheat. Say it's like on a curl, you cheat curl. You don't have the exact perfect form because you've gone up in a little bit in weight. Now, that's something like everybody does. And it's also something that if you're running a mile, like even like, well, most people, I don't know, me, if I'm running a mile, at some point in that mile, I'm going to not be in the exact perfect form that I would prefer to have. And this also can come from breaking a bone or tearing something, or this can be a result. Like if you're, say like you're using improper, you'll hear this all the time. If you're on a bench and you're using improper form, you'll hurt your shoulders. Now, runners, they say like if you have improper form, you're going to hurt your back, and you can hurt your legs, and you can hurt yourself. And it's true. From my experience, you can. Once you get out of form, you start to feel it in your hips and your ankles and your knees. So now, like, that's like kind of the judge. And these are going in increasing order. And so, like, actually, I made it kind of like a weird thing. And I could make this into a quick video, but I didn't. So form breakdown usually leads to failure, okay? Now, failure is different than breaking down than form, okay? So, like, when you break down form, you're doing a curl, but you're cheating, but you're still making the curl. You are running, but you aren't really running in the exact way that you're supposed to be running. You're kind of going back and forth, and you're not keeping, your head up, your shoulders back, and, like, you start to hurt, okay? And failure is when it can be in sets or reps, and it can be distance or speed. So like say like you like set like a time for yourself that you want to make, and you don't necessarily get there in that time. Well, you failed. And that can be because of, a handful of things. You set the bar too high, or you didn't pace yourself, and you now are, I guess you set the bar too high again. And distance is like that point where if you're trying to run a mile and you just legit cannot run a mile, well, you've hit failure. Oh yeah, and I defined it. Failure is inability to perform the task, okay? And okay, now this is going to be another one of those medical terminologies where if you say anything, I'm just going to get a headache, and I'm never going to listen to you anyway, because I really don't care, because this is us talking, and if you're not talking with me, then do whatever you want to do. But in general, is that failure comes from dehydration, okay? And I'm going to explain that because I'm sure that is controversial because of endless possibilities. Giving me a headache just thinking about it. Okay, so like the 3 levels is like you're thirsty, and say like you're running and you're like, oh dang, I need water. Oh dang. The next is like shivers. Like you get past the point where you've needed water for a while and you start to like kind of like feel kind of a little bit faint, and your body like kind of like is trembling a little bit, and you're sweating profusely, and or you're a little bit chilly. Now that could be like construed one way or the other, but so can everything. So, and the number one, the worst, where you know that you are absolutely dehydrated is when you can no longer hold liquids. Like when your body is like in shock, or like say like you're drinking water and you need it really bad, you will notice that you can get sick. And that if you've ever been super sick, okay, and I know that this is why I am saying from my experience, because I've been so sick and I was so dehydrated where I could not literally take in any more water. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that's just like your body's way of telling you, like, you can't do anything, we're shutting down, good luck. And this happens to me, and I actually have gotten to this point. Like, I went through pain, broke down in form, and I got to failure because I no longer could run the distances that I wanted. And I repeatedly went to failure. Okay? And as a result of that, I got dehydrated. Okay? And I legit got all the way to can't hold liquids. Okay? Like, I couldn't drink without having to go to the bathroom immediately. I couldn't eat without having to go to the bathroom immediately. And I know it's gross to talk about, but typically, the more gross the subject, the more important it is. And that is a huge thing. Like if you notice, and it can be slight, okay? It doesn't have to be drastic. Like I've had it to where like if I would put water in my mouth, I would automatically throw up. And I know that's disgusting. But I also have it where I drink water and, I'll be fine for a little bit. But I notice that I need to go a little bit more often than not. And then when I eat, I need to go a little bit often more than not. So there's like even different levels of that. So where I reached is the lowest level, where it was just I was drinking and I was just going to the restroom a little bit more than I typically would. Okay, so this is like a good indication that you are about to hit the 5th indicator of overtraining. And once you hit the 5th this, which we've discussed plenty of times, and I'm not even going to discuss it any further, then you have basically need to, you don't have to stop depending on how far you've gotten, but you need to be going in a degress manner. Like you cannot keep on pushing. You need to, like, I guess I can put this into better terms for me, because I have done this so many times that each time I know exactly how far I can push before I reach the wall. And this time I didn't even hit the wall. And every other time, which has probably been like 4 or 5 other training sessions, I hit the wall every single time. And when you actually hit the wall, it, like I talked about, it is a much more drastic recovery, where I mean, depending on how bad it gets, I mean, it can be really serious. Like you got to go to the ER right away, or, you legitimately are stuck in bed, or, you no longer can go. Like you are done for however long, and you got to be the judge of that, or you need someone to judge for you. So once you reached dehydration, or once you dehydrate fully, you have hit the wall, okay? And I'm not going to totally break this down, because this is not the focus. The focus is pacing to not hit the wall. And so I'm going to go back to dehydration, and I'm going to go back to failure, and I'm going to go back down these real quick. So dehydration, once again, is that like there are so many different fluids going on in your body, and obviously water is the only one that you see going in, well, that is going in and coming out. But the way that you hydrate is going to be how your chemical imbalance, and you eat, is the way that your body is going to react to stimulus and chemicals, and what you're going to produce, how you're going to produce it, and how well you're fueled, how well you're ready. And that's why dehydration is it is like the number one indicator, because once you start having issues with your hydration, and the 3 levels that I was talking about, is that once you hit that level, you basically cannot do anything else besides back down, because you no longer are able to produce the chemicals to allow you to move. And it means that the chemicals or the drugs or the food that you are putting in your body is no longer sufficient, okay, to meet the needs of whatever you're pushing yourself for, which is why you hit failure. And I'm going to say that failure can be sort of like planned, and it can just happen. And with all these, it can be planned and just happen, besides the last two, which is why they go in sequential order, is that you don't plan to ever hit the wall. You plan not to hit the wall. This is the only way you can plan, is not hit it. Dehydration is the same thing. You just plan not to hit, you either become dehydrated or you're not, and it's different levels of it. Failure, you can plan for failure. Like, you can push past that rep to where you know that you're not going to be able to do this rep and you need some help, or you know you can't run this distance, but you're going to walk part of it, and get there somehow, and just mentally and physically get there. Okay, and the form comes down to sort of like in 3 different ways. Is that like you can consciously break form because you want to lift more weight and you need to in order to do it, or you break form because you have to, because you no longer are able to, and you can keep form, which is the ideal training style. It should be. And then going all the way down to pain, can be broken down into so many different levels that you can stop training or realize that you've overtrained if you just hurt your ankle. Like, say your joint hurts and you don't want to go any further. Well, you need to slow down, and like, say your knee. I'm going to give examples because this really does do a good job of leading into the next part. So like your ankle hurts. So you're like, okay, my ankle hurts and you need to take a day because you can't go. Or your wrists hurt because something happened. You can't do a push-up because it's uncomfortable. And you may even find that you can bench. Like, personally, this is an example of mine, is that I could bench because of the way that my wrists were and the pressure on it, but I could not do a push-up because of the way that my hands were. And it was just something that I had to overcome. Or it could be like a known pain. Say like you just got your hip replaced or a knee replaced. Or say that you just got a cramp and it was just because you didn't drink enough water. And you just get back and you drink a little bit of water and cramp goes away and you just go out right away again. So pain can be like so different. But that's like what leads back into what I was talking about, overtraining and training. Okay? And the part of training is to always be getting better than before. And if you're staying stagnant, you are not even training, you're maintaining. Okay? And training is the result of pushing yourself so that that you are increasing either your weight and reps or your speed and your distance. Okay? And I know that you can also equate this to age, and that like once you get to a certain age, you're just maintaining, because no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to be as good as you were. And that's possible to some degree, I agree. And others, I was just saying, I'm not to that point quite yet. But for example, like you may not be, Let's take Michael Phelps. Like he might not be like Olympic level, but he may have fallen out of Olympic level because he trained so hard when he was younger and if he waited a little bit when he was older. Now, typically the people that are younger, but that could be because of being able to be pushed. Now, I'm not saying that I know this for sure. I'm just saying is that like I'm sure he still is a good swimmer, just like all these other people that train. And so like where you got to understand is that you don't always have to be improving and you don't always have to even be training. Like you can meet your goal and it is completely okay to maintain, but just understand that this is not training, and once you're never going to overtrain by maintaining. And then so the whole point of pushing yourself is that you're basically always you're never trying to overtrain. You're never trying to be in pain. You're never trying to break down form. You're never trying to have failure. You're never trying to get dehydrated, and you're for sure not trying to hit the wall. And I'm going to explain this really simply, is that like, in terms that you probably can understand, is that there are days, from day to day, from week to week, from set to set, is that like one set may feel great and then you come back and the very next set doesn't feel good, or you have a great day, everything is going right, like you didn't have to slow down, you met all your goals, which is part of pacing, so I'm going to throw it in there, is that like you had you have been working out for like 6 months and like you had an idea of what you wanted to do when you went into the gym. Or you just went into the gym, had no idea, but everything that you picked up felt light and you felt great and you just were able to do it. Well, that is like the ideal training situation where you're still pushing, you're getting better. You're not just doing the same routine as always. You're not going down, you're not seeing negative results, but you felt no pain, you didn't break any form, you're able to do it with ease, and it's just great. Now, that's like kind of like why people struggle with training and overtraining so much, is because people want to get better faster, so they keep pushing into into overtraining. And so you're always in this battle between overtraining and just training. And typically you do want to be in just training mode, which is why basically the only thing that I can say is that and this may hit or resonate, and you may want to be this type of person or not be this person, is that if you overtrain on purpose, it is sort of like if you are like a Navy SEAL, or if you are a Marine, or you want to be ready for everything coming at you. Like say if you are training for a marathon, well, typically I don't think, like if it's your first marathon, you're typically not going to be running perfect, and you're just not, everything's not going to go like sunshine and roses. And you want to be prepared for still achieving your goal, but also experienced and not being surprised by everything that's coming your way, all the breakdowns that happen. And so like typically you want to like scale up slowly. I mean, that's the ideal, and never hit overtraining, because once you overtrain, you have to stop and kind of back off, which is why overtraining can literally happen day in and day out. It can happen over a course of time. It can be planned, or it can just happen to you. So the number one thing to remember about overtraining and training is that you are always in a balance between the two. And when you do it on purpose, well, maybe I'm going into this a little too deep, but like, maybe I should use an example of what I'm doing. Okay, that's better. Is that I purposely went into overtraining mode in the past week. And where I am right now is that like I went for a run today, and my run today went almost perfect. So it was almost there was no overtraining. Now there was, obviously I had a little bit of issues with that I had from last week. My back was hurting a little bit. My knees were hurting a little bit. I wasn't quite 100%, but I was able to do it pretty easy, which is why I pushed on to the gym. Now, when I went to the gym, I honestly knew when I got to the gym that I didn't know how long I was going to spend. I didn't know how long I was going to be there. And I ended up getting through my warm up, and I did one exercise, and I realized that I just, because I still have more running. I still have to finish this week and next week, and so I knew that I probably should stop. So that's the whole point of where I'm talking, is that like sometimes if you plan for it, is that overtraining can not be as bad, as horrific, as negative as everybody, where people, the number one thing, this is the actual number one thing, sorry, I blanked before. The number one thing is don't let people tell you what it is. Even me telling you what it is, you still should come up with your own idea of what it is. Because you might want to train and may be training for something less or more demanding depending on who you are. And you don't want to be the person that's going to the gym that has all these guys, these two dudes sitting at a table, like talking trash on you, and it messing with your mentality. And if that's the case, then, that's the type of where your mentality and your reps, your habits will overtake that type of negativity. And unfortunately, this is something that happens literally all the time. This is something that, it can be the guy at the gym that is trying to push you to do more weight, or is trying to show you up, or it could be the girl who is, or the person, sorry, I should go with the person who's not paying attention to you at all, is on her phone, is doing all these other things, is not aware of you and what you're trying to do. So, it can also be literal, like the person at the front. It doesn't even have to be people pushing you. It can be people just, looking at you and judging, oh, you're too fat. You probably hear this in passing all the time. Or he's weird, he's breathing too hard. And trying to maintain this perfect image is not always conducive to performance. And so that is why the number one thing is defining it for yourself and then changing it as time goes on. You don't want to be, now I am going to go here because this is an example, is you don't want to be a guy or be a runner and have some girl CrossFitter, which this is personal experience, so I can say, and I probably shouldn't go here. But for some reason, these girls, they just want to beat the guys. And so they're like, oh, you can't lift that much. And they start talking towards you. And, you're like, you could talk back and be like, well, I just ran a half marathon, or I just ran 56 miles before I got here to do this. But, whatever. But that's the type of stuff that it's you have to maintain your cool, your understanding of yourself, and you have to be the bigger person. And so I guess that's why the difference between what typically they say the health industry is, and all these guys that take all these drugs and push so hard until you have to kill yourself. I'm not actually, I keep saying I'm not even against steroids. I'm not really against all this stuff. I'm just I'm against people just being so negative about it, because you can take steroids and, be doing it for 1,000 different reasons. And, it may be okay. I don't think I do. But you never know in today's world, who knows? But I'm not really against, I'm not trying to hate or be against anybody, because that's the type of stuff that pushes people to hitting a wall or getting dehydrated or pushing them to failure. And that's why I guess why I even say that failure isn't even too bad, because a lot of times you will want to see how much you can bench and if you can get there, so you want to run and you're not going to necessarily get there. So like failure is like also you have to have failure because you got to understand how you can succeed. And that's why listening to other people is very difficult, and why dealing with other people can be very difficult, and why a lot of times you're going to have to be hearing and listening to yourself and blocking out all these people and not dealing with it and not listening to it. And even me, I have hurt my shoulder, I've hurt my back, I've hurt myself because I too become susceptible to um, outside influences. And that's typically also why I train alone. Typically, why I stay away from a lot of the different things. And typically, that's why know, I guess I hate to say it that I stay away from conflict because, like, I don't want to sound like, oh, I stay away from conflict, but like, I'm just trying to do what I'm doing, and if everybody gets their way, then you're never going to get anywhere. And I guess I could go into this about personally at my gym. Like I've had, obviously you have run-ins at your gym, and they'll say, oh, like there's always some dude there that's trying to say like you're going too hard, you're making too much noise, you're hogging this and hogging that. And at my gym, there's no lunk alarm, but there is obviously, strongman training. There is deadlifting equipment. There is a wide range of people there. There's older people, there's younger people. I mean, there is bodybuilders, there's powerlifters. I mean, there is just long distance runners. There is fast walkers. I've seen them there. There's people that come in just to get a massage and be in the tanning bed, and that's it. And so it can be difficult to judge who should be there and who shouldn't be there. And I guess my whole thing is that everybody should be there, and there's going to be conflict, and sometimes that it takes people a while, especially if that's the only type of person they are, without ever being kind and considerate, and they never care about where you're coming from, that they don't understand that that they can ask you and you can respond to them, which can be a problem in itself. So at my gym, it actually has been kind of nice, and I don't have a problem. I mean, you really have to bother me, and most of the time anymore, because of what I was talking about, and if you really do kind of define things for yourself, is that you realize is that you yourself are more bothered than the people around you. Like, somebody says something to you and doesn't even really bother you. You even are trying to be nice about it, but then you realize that you're being bothered more by your own indicators. And so a lot of times you just really have to judge, to be accountable for everything. And I guess I'm just rambling, but I guess the point is that there are a few different times where I've actually talked this long, but this overtraining thing is just such a big thing for so many people, where they use it as fire, I can run 100 yards, can you run 100 yards? And they push people, which is good, but at the same time, you gotta know somebody, and you develop an understanding of what that person's trying to do, what they're able to do, and really is that you don't ever. I think when you get to the point where you're watching people hit the wall around you constantly, and you are in that type of zone where you may be even pushing people to hit the wall, and you're trying to, that you have to step back and maybe look at yourself, even if you're not the one hitting the wall. But at the same time, is that you gotta be watching what you're doing, because at the end of the day, if you hit the wall, you have to deal with it. And if other people hit the wall, you can help them. They don't have to. So anyway, I guess the reason why I went into this for so long again, is because I didn't make a video yesterday, because it basically would have been the same thing. I was worse yesterday than I was the day before, and today I was better, but I really, really quickly went back to like being dehydrated. I honestly, I didn't really get to the point of dehydrated, but I hit failure like very quick, and I didn't want to push much further than that. So be safe and just really know what you're trying to do, and the longer you do it, the better you're going to get at it. Maybe. And that's why I'm saying is that, like, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You got to be conscientious, and you just got to be, just listen to what I'm saying and just thumbs up and like it and just go away. I don't really care besides what you think. Besides that, maybe I should edit these.